Verb conjugation in Italian is the modification of a verb's form that expresses facts, repeated actions, and a list of actions. The present tense is one of the easiest tenses in Italian because it has a simple conjugation pattern. However, the language has a progressive tense with gerunds, similar to ing in English. This concept needs to be shown a bit later, after understanding basic verb conjugation. To conjugate verbs in the present, we first have to understand how to identify Italian verbs, such as who is doing the action and when the action happens. For now, we'll focus on the conjugation of regular verbs in the present. Although Italian has irregular verbs too, those will be shown separately in the next video. So, Italian verbs always have an infinitive ending that falls into three categories: are, ere, ire. Common verbs that fall into each category can be amare, parlare, studiare, credere, vedere, prendere, sentire, aprire, dormire. These words are infinitives, the basic form of verbs without conjugation in any tense, and each category has its own patterns. The best way to recognize them is to see the time change in a sentence, which combines with the personal pronouns io, tu, lui, lei, noi, voi, loro. Let's begin with are verbs. The present conjugation pattern for such verbs goes as follows. We get the verb stem by dropping the ending are from the infinitive. Then we add endings to the stem that correspond to the category of the verb. Since we're beginning with are verbs, let's use the verb parlare, to speak. To conjugate parlare in the present, we drop the endings, get the verb stems, and add the endings that match the category. For io, add o. For tu, add i. For lui, lei, add a. For noi, add iamo. For voi, add ate. For loro, add ano. Io parlo. Tu parli. Lui, lei parla. Noi parliamo. Voi parlate. Loro parlano. These are the endings for regular are verbs in the present in Italian. And remember that the language often drops the pronouns because verb conjugation is sufficient in telling who the subject is. Let's move on to ere verbs, like credere, to believe. The conjugation pattern for ere verbs in the present is similar, where we get the verb stems by dropping endings and adding the corresponding endings to the category of the verb. For such verbs, some endings are borrowed from are verbs, but the difference is in lui, lei, voi, and loro. They use e, ete, and ono, while the rest of the endings are borrowed. Io credo. Tu credi. Lui, lei crede. Noi crediamo. Voi credete. Loro credono. These are the endings for regular ere verbs in the present in Italian. Let's finish with ire verbs, like dormire, to sleep. The conjugation pattern for ire verbs in the present is also similar, where we get the verb stems by dropping endings and adding corresponding endings to the category of the verb. For such verbs, many endings are borrowed from ere verbs, with the only change in voi, which uses ite. Io dormo. Tu dormi. Lui, lei dorme. Noi dormiamo. Voi dormite. Loro dormono. These are the endings for regular ire verbs in the present in Italian. However, there's a special subcategory of ire verbs that adds more letters. Although I said that irregular verbs or for the next video, this subcategory is not really irregular because its conjugations are the same as any ire verb. The change happens when the second to last syllable of the infinitive is stressed, like in the verbs capire, finire, preferire, pulire, spedire. Such verbs tend to add I, esse, ci in io, tu, lui, lei, and loro, but not in noi, voi. Capisco, capisci, capisce, capiamo, capite, capiscono. After learning this subcategory, you can now fully understand how regular present verb conjugation works in Italian. It simply follows endings that correspond to each verb type, made from stems and verb endings. Once you memorize these patterns, you can conjugate many regular verbs correctly and speak Italian using simple, everyday phrases like Io studio l'italiano. Tu capisci bene. Lei parla lentamente. Noi dormiamo poco. Loro finiscono il lavoro. Don't forget that these sentences can be said without the subject pronoun, which is a practical way to speak Italian. Overall, this is how the concept works in the language.